somewhat different.
Amanda, is there that disconnect between the broader story, which, as Murray conceded, there is a story to tell and a positive one, but when you drill down in the cost of living issues, looming rate rises, markets pricing in several rate rises over the next 12 to 18 months, it's not easy around the kitchen table, is it?
It's easy, but if we look at the big picture here, as that plays out in the lives of Australians, we see that not only are we being recognised worldwide for our economic performance and having had among the lowest death rates in the world through the COVID period, but we have had the strongest economic recovery in the world. We have the lowest inflation of the developed world. And even though that is real, we have put in place cost of living relief through the last budget to help people to manage those costs, knowing that it's due to peak over the next year and it then is predicted to taper off from then on. As we see low unemployment rates, that puts upward pressure on wages. That's good for Australians. And so the work we put in to make the economy strong does deliver dividends in the lives of Australians. And when you compare that to a policy that comes from the Labor Party that's to promise wage rises with no real plan on how to do it, other than perhaps some sort of alluding to a centralised setting of wages, then you're left with a cupboard that's pretty bare on the Labor side and a track record of delivery that, through some of the difficult times we've faced since the last depression, has, despite many challenges, been pretty good.
Murray, Amanda points to that question about wages and what is the Labor plan. She makes a valid point that when you look at unemployment as low as it is, economists will tell you that is the best way to drive up wages. Beyond that, what else can be done?
Well, we've been hearing this from the government for some time now, that as Australians' unemployment rate fell, then wages would immediately go up. And of course, the reality is very different to that. Under this government, we have had the lowest wages growth, real wages growth in Australian history. And that's why people are struggling so much. So this election, there is a real contrast between the parties. Labor does have a plan to lift wages, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And on the other hand, what we've learned from the government in the last week or so is they have a plan to strip back workplace protections. Again,
another Labor lie.
They won't give a guarantee that they will make changes to the Better Off Overall test.
The PM ruled that out today.
If you go back and have a look at his press conference, he didn't do that.
This is more Labor lies. It's appalling.
I understand you're defensive, but you know that is the Liberals'
It's just
plan.
a fact, Murray.
Well,
it's just a fact.
The Liberals in this, you and I are both in the Senate. You'll remember that we debated your legislation about IR. The only reason these changes were blocked was because Labor got a majority, while you voted for these changes to cut people's pay. And then the last week,
now
that's
I've
what's
heard
come
everything.
out again.
Now
On
I've
the
heard
other hand,
everything.
what you're hearing from Labor is that we will particularly take action to make work more secure. I spent a lot of time in central Queensland in coal mining communities, and for all the government's promises about coal mining, mining there has been decimated by the casualisation of work. And Labor has a clear plan to fix that, changing the objectives of the Fair Work Act, bringing in same job, same pay laws, which mean that someone working alongside a permanent worker will get at least the same pay. The government has had 10 years to fix these things and they haven't done anything about it.
Murray, the ABS has said casualisation is not happening. It has gone down over the last 20 years.
Well, again, you might choose to sit in your office and read papers from the ABS. I actually get out into coal mining communities and into retail stores and speak to workers. And the reality, again, is different. This is the problem. If you've got a government that sits back in its office, gets briefings, gets ABS papers, but doesn't actually get out and mix with workers...
No, we deal in facts, actually.
We deal in facts. Understand what's going on in the real world.
We deal with facts in the lives of real people, Murray.
If members of the government got out in the real world, talked to workers, talked about the fact that their wages
more than a slur and an assumption.
Inflation, talking about the facts that they are struggling to pay their mortgages,
Kieran,
then
let's get real here. Let's get real here. He talks about getting at a GP. 88% is the level of bulk billing, the highest it's ever been. Hospital funding at record levels. More drugs than ever being subsidised by the PBS, something Labor had to stop doing in government because they couldn't manage the budget. The biggest budget turnaround we have seen in a very, very long time. And meanwhile, on the Labor side, there is $301 billion worth of spending commitments they've already made that they have no plan to pay for. No, it's actually a fact.
Come from? Which minister's office did that come from?
That is something that has been... Oh, please.
Well, where'd that come
lift
from?
the bar.
Where'd that come
and yet, Labor goes out into the electorates, tries to scare pensioners into thinking they're going to be put on a cashless debit card, which it is false. Then they lie about a Mediscare, then they lie about casualisation. If this is how we start, how are we going to finish?